Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a deep dive into what is, frankly, a massive 50-point strategic document, and we are going to distill it down into a clear, actionable masterclass on global leadership. We're looking at a true executive blueprint, one that merges deep, nuanced human resources expertise with some of the largest international regulatory frameworks on the planet. So it begs the question, how exactly do you lead when the stakes are truly global? Let's be real, the challenges here are incredible. Imagine having to drive a global transformation agenda where on one side of your desk, you're dealing with acute, volatile humanitarian crises, and on the other, you're actively trying to harmonize international civil aviation policies. It sounds like an impossible balancing act, right? But for a global systems leader, that is just a regular Tuesday.
Now, the framing here is actually fascinating. We are bridging two totally different worlds. On one hand, you have UNICEF's CRITS values: care, respect, integrity, trust, accountability, and sustainability. And you are advancing those right alongside ICAO's No Country Left Behind initiative. It perfectly captures the core mission, delivering deeply localized, human-centric care while simultaneously ensuring equitable global economic progress. Here's our roadmap for making sense of this. We'll quickly cover the complex operating environment, the dual mandate of leadership, executing the transformation agenda, navigating regulatory frameworks, leveraging data and tech, and finally, building long-term institutional resilience. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. A complex operating environment. The reality on the ground in a place like East Jerusalem is intense. If you are an executive here, say, a chief of people and culture, you aren't just pushing paper or handling standard administration. You are literally leading neutrally through active, long-standing conflict, continued occupation, and incredibly sensitive geopolitical realities across the West Bank and Gaza Strip. It's a role that requires you to balance the immediate duty of care for staff who are operating under sustained heavy stress with those massive organizational goals of delivering international impact. Which brings us to Section 2. The dual mandate of leadership. Every systems leader faces this exact tightrope walk. On one side, you've got the non-negotiable day-to-day administrative grind, recruitment, compliance, entitlements, and staff well-being. You have to keep the lights on. But on the other side, you have this ambitious, multi-year strategic transformation, focusing on global regulatory coherence and economic efficiency. The true strategic value of a leader is making sure these two dimensions reinforce each other rather than compete. Because let's face it, flawlessly delivering that dependable daily service is what builds the credibility you absolutely need to push through those massive global transformation efforts. Oh right, Section 3, executing the transformation agenda. So how does a leader actually pull this off on the ground? They use a phased work plan just like this. It takes all that high-level abstract strategy and forces it into a concrete, stress-tested process. It kicks off with structured scoping to find the gaps. Next up is technical consultation, basically stress-testing your approaches with volunteer states so you avoid incredibly costly revisions down the road. Then comes the formal panel review, and finally, dissemination and implementation support. By breaking the work down into these 4 steps, policies are rigorously vetted before they ever hit the broader international community. And talk about a tough crowd. To actually execute that 4-step plan, a leader has to wrangle an incredibly diverse web of stakeholders. We're talking UN country teams, member states' civil aviation authorities, commercial airlines, airport operators, and regional economic communities. Getting them all on the same page is a bit like trying to conduct a global orchestra, where half the musicians are reading different sheet music. You simply cannot dictate global transformation. You have to consult, map your stakeholders, and do the hard work of building legitimate consensus. Let's move to Section 4, navigating regulatory and economic frameworks. When you look at how multilateral solutions actually tackle these global challenges, it's pretty brilliant. Take economic development, for example. You often have wildly diverging state positions, especially between advanced and developing markets. How do you solve that? Through harmonized ICAO documents and guidelines. By resolving these regulatory discrepancies early on through careful, standardized guidance, leaders effectively prevent isolated economic disagreements from spiraling into major diplomatic or commercial disputes. It's proactive problem solving at a massive scale. Next up, Section 5, data, technology, and capacity. This right here is a total game changer for modern global leadership. We are aggressively moving away from manual administrative burdens. That's what we want to keep low. And instead, we are heavily shifting resources into business intelligence and predictive risk analytics. Leveraging modern software and digitized workflows isn't just a nice to have to save a few hours, it allows leaders to anticipate workforce crises, regulatory bottlenecks, and external shocks way before they happen. It's about protecting the absolute integrity of the mission. 193. That is the number of member states a global organization like the UN or ICAO actually serves. And here's the kicker. Institutional maturity across those 193 states is completely over the map. Because of that, just standardizing technology is never going to be enough. Creating self-sustaining regional seminars, localized capacity building, and accessible e-learning modules is absolutely vital. You have to ensure that a small island developing state has the exact same capacity to engage with these systems as the world's largest economies. Finally, Section 6, building long-term institutional resilience. The big takeaway here? All of this structure, the phased plans, the stakeholder mapping, the predictive analytics, it all boils down to building true institutional resilience. It's about creating an organization that has the actual muscle memory to absorb geopolitical shocks and flex instantly for humanitarian surges. Most importantly, it proves that localized capacity building directly empowers national staff. When you equip local teams, you are building the durable, long-term resilience that maintains global stability long after direct interventions end. We've seen how bridging intensely human needs with macro-level economic frameworks can create literal global impact. We've explored the tension of the dual mandate, the power of data, and the absolute necessity of institutional resilience. So my final question for you is this. How can you take this executive playbook and use it to drive transformation, balance daily care with long-term strategy, and build unshakable resilience in your own high-stakes environment? Think about it and start building your blueprint today.